liability. Corporate liability is where the law imposes on the corporation a penalty, carries out an act that tantamounts to bribery or corruption. We are not only talking about no consent, because no consent would be just mere denial, but we are looking at something more than that. Sure that you have enough procedures, you have adequate.
Today it's our honor to have Mr. Suresh Kumar with us, right? Suresh would like to say hi and good morning to our audience today.
Hi, good morning, everyone.
Yeah, so it's our honor because Suresh Kumar today will actually discuss about the Malaysian Anti-Corruption Act 2009 with the latest amendment which happened, effective on 1st of June, right? He come with the experience of being a resource trainer with Malaysia Anti-Corruption Commission, and aside to that, he also a certified risk management auditor, right? And on top of that, he also a project lead for anti-fraud and anti-bribery and corruption framework projects. So on the plus point is he also graduated as a law professional, right? So today I believe all his sharing will be beneficial for all the corporate leaders out there. And we really hope this 15 minutes conversation will bring you impact for the whole day, right? So Suresh, are you ready today?
Yes, good to go, man.
Good to go, right? So the very first questions that I think, because previously we have a lot of conversations with our corporate client, they actually has one question in the mind. Actually, what is this latest act about, and what is the impacts towards them as organizations?
Okay, thanks Max and Impact Value Volution to have me over here. I think this is a very good initiative. Thank you very, very much.
Thank you for that.
And the most important thing that captures everybody's attention is the word anti-corruption. You know, the minute they hear the word anti-corruption, everybody thinks that, we are going to A to Z guideline about how we should fight corruption in the country and things like that. It has gone with the old school. The original act has actually been amended and then they came up with a new law in 2009, Malaysian Anti-Corruption Commission Act in 2009. So that particular legislation actually gave about a lot of important guidelines, but it was focusing a lot on individual liability, meaning if it is an individual that commits the act of bribery or corruption, then he or she shall be held liable individually. So in this way, there are a lot of loopholes that were actually discovered in the law. For example, sometimes employees carry out their conduct or their act because they were actually ordained or they were actually given the permission by the organization as a whole when they represent an organization to actually carry out a specific act. For example, like if you look at awarding of contracts to parties who do not have the relevant prerequisites or do not have the relevant merits. So sometimes they are forced to actually give out or award the contracts to these people. And their defense is always this. Their defense is always the fact that, I'm not too sure. I was just ordered to do so. So this was a big lacuna or a vacuum in the act itself where we couldn't actually go after the rightful party. Here, the actual perpetrator of the offense could be certain key people in the organization. So that is where they decided to come up with an amendment, to develop an amendment to the act, whereby they incorporated, this was in 2018, they have actually incorporated a new clause, new provision, which is actually section capital A, which talks about corporate liability. Corporate liability is where the law imposes on the corporation a penalty if persons associated with that organization carries out an act that tantamounts to bribery or corruption. So it's individual liability. Now the corporation will be held liable. Metaphorically speaking, it is like looking at a child at home. When a child does something wrong, it is always the parents are to be blamed because they did not, control the child. There were not enough control factors that were actually put in the conduct of the child. So similarly, organizations now have to take the responsibility. This is just to pressure the organizations to take responsibility. And what happens is that the organizations it shall be held liable for acts carried out by associated persons. Now, the word, even the definition of associated persons is very wide. You have many people who are associated with the organization. Some are individuals who are employees. Some are contractors, vendors, or people who act on behalf of the organization. So the scope, entire supply chain is very, very wide. So what happens is anyone who acts on behalf of the organization as an agent for the principal who is an organization the organization shall be held liable for under the scheme of corporate liability. Now, corporate liability means the organization can be charged. There are many, the act actually names a few people who actually form who are supposed to absorb the liability in the commercial organization.
Wow. Yeah. Would you like to share with us who are the one that actually highlighted in the act? Yeah. Is it the board of director?
Could be the board. It depends on the size of the organization as well. The CFOs, the decision makers, okay, and also people who have actually directly given the permission to that particular agent or the associated person to actually carry out that act of bribery or corruption. So it imposes that kind of a responsibility on the organization itself to come up with relevant measures to prevent such things from happening. So the only defense the organization has is the fact that, okay, look, we are now being charged for bribery or corruption, but here we are telling you we did not authorize that act. So the organization need to come up with their defenses. There are two defenses, namely in the act. Number one is to show that they did not consent. There was no consent, and there were adequate procedures in the organization to prevent corruption or bribery from taking place. Okay?
Yeah, Suresh, yes. With that, I would like to ask a question because just now you mentioned about the importance of the people associated with the supply chain actually complying to this act, right? So I would like to ask, what will be the organization's actions right now so that they actually align their whole supply chains to this act?
So that is the reason why what they need to do is that they need to focus on these two elements that actually form the organization. They need to focus on the elements of people. The people factor has to be controlled. So number one, we are looking at the internal parties. The internal parties, because the term associated person covers everybody in the supply chain. So if you're looking at associated person, it could be employees, it could be contractors or vendors who are acting, or even agents who are acting on behalf of the organization. So all these people have to come under the umbrella of control. So control here we are talking about is that, number one, as I was mentioning to you earlier, Max, just before your question, the fact that the organization needs to show that they did never consented to the act of bribery or corruption carried out by the individual employee or contractor or associated persons. Number one, no consent. Number two, the organization needs to show that they have actually come up or developed adequate procedures that would prevent acts of bribery or corruption. So adequate procedures here we are talking about is all the policies, your SOPs, your effective contracts, your effective job descriptions. So to formulate an effective corporate governance framework to prevent bribery or corruption. So this will actually be an enterprise-wide application. So when you're talking about an enterprise-wide application, meaning all employees need to comply with it and all those associated persons with the organization needs to comply with it. So if you're talking about an employee, it starts right from the making sure that they have an effective contract of service for the employees and all the relevant policies and procedures and all the relevant governance factors to make sure that the employee does not carry out or does not commit the act of bribery or corruption. As for third parties, the governance should be by way of contract for service. So when you're talking about contract for service, all those elements of do's and don'ts are to be included effectively in the contract so as not to allow the parties that have been hired or engaged to carry out acts of bribery or corruption.
Yeah. Right. Thank you for your input, Suresh. So which means that the upcoming challenge for the company is that how they actually going to make sure their process is as smooth as ever, but also comply with the non-consent thingy and to comply with the latest amendment. So do you mean that?
Yes, correct. And we are not, sorry, we are not only talking about no consent, because no consent would be just a mere denial. But we are not just looking at a mere denial, but we are looking at something more than that. So when you say no consent, you have to show that you never actually expressly gave any consent. That's number one. And to make sure that you have enough procedures, you have adequate procedures. So that word adequate procedures itself sends shivers down a lot of people's spine. You know, how do we come up with so many different procedures?
Yeah, true.
It's a very tall order, because your procedures start with you coming up with or effectively conducting a corruption risk assessment first. You have to do a corruption risk assessment. After doing a corruption risk assessment, you identify the gaps in your processes, your critical processes, and then come up with the relevant control measures to make sure that these gaps are addressed and the risk is minimized. Now, there's also a small teeny weeny part where it could be an overkill, meaning you come up with procedures which are overwhelming, so overwhelming that it actually disrupts your business continuity. That's
so many red tape, you know.
Correct. That's not the point. The point is for you to come up with something that is proportionate and reasonable with the gravity of risk. So referring back to this, we talk about the adequate procedures. Adequate procedures are already enough to show that, look, what are the areas that you should look at. So the Prime Minister's office, the Prime Minister's department actually issued guidelines for the adequate procedures. So even in the guidelines is quite an effective framework to actually guide participants with our help to make sure that they understand the importance of what are the areas to be looked at. Because there is actually this principle called the principle of trust, TRUST, which will be given in detail during our session.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Right. Thank you, Suresh. I think our time is up. But just want to summarize the whole thing is it's very important for organizations. Correct me if I'm wrong, Suresh, if I say something that not aligned with what you say. About the latest act by MACC is that last time it's only individual will be sued on court if, let's say, any bribery case is being found. But now it's more on the corporation side that will be responsible. And aside to that, the challenges for the corporate company right now is to ensure their processes are aligned, all right, and comply with the adequate procedures and non-consent. Not only non-consent, but adequate procedures, where every procedures need to relook and aligns towards the latest amendment. But the tricky thing is here the tricky thing is how can we ensure effectiveness while we're doing this, right? So stay tuned with our next webinar, which is complimentary. You can actually find in our company page or the comment below here at our live video, right? So any last word, Suresh, for all the potential participants that are going to join, right? We have up to date, Suresh, we have 60 participants joining, and we expect more to come, right? Any last message for them? Because we will share this recording to them as well.
Yes. The only thing that I've got to say is that please do attend this session. I think it's a very important eye-opener for all of us. The enforcement is not going to wait because we have given ample time. Since 2018 till now, there was enough time given because it has been started on the 1st of June. It's already in place. 1st of June, last Monday, we have the enforcement has already been started, commenced. So it is already effective law. So I think it's good for us to have a good understanding of what we need to do.
Right. Thank you, Suresh. Thank you, Suresh. I think that's all for today. Right. Thank you very much. And have a nice day, Suresh.
You too.
Okay.
Bye.
Thank you. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.
So our audience at Facebook, we will have our upcoming Sembang Through, which will happen on tomorrow as well. Please stay tuned to our Facebook page. Right. That's all for today. And have a nice day.